Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 25 of Relearned, formerly what we used to call, learning outside the lines. But that's okay. We're not bitter. It's fine. It's okay. It's not.
Yeah, it's fine. It's cool. It's cool. Yeah.
Glenn,
yeah.
How are you doing, man?
I'm great. So 25, that's a quarter of 100, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
wow.
We're English teachers, but I'm pretty sure that math checks out.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, math is one of those things that for the most part stays pretty constant. So, yeah, that's what they say. I never really believe that, though. That's why I teach English.
We've accomplished a lot of great things because of both the humanities and the sciences and mathematics. So we can all coincide.
Yeah. I guess.
So this is great. So we've got our guest today is Buffy Hamilton. So Buffy is an award-winning media specialist / English teacher / pioneer of all things when it comes to online tools and developing ways to engage kids in and outside of the classroom. So Glenn, you have the tendency to fanboy various people that you connect with, and so Buffy was that for me early in my career and stuff. There was a time I was considering being a media specialist myself, and just in the years leading up to me really making contact with her, it was just one of those things where I was like, this person's amazing. Look at the stuff that they create, look how dynamic they are online. And when I finally got a chance to meet Buffy, she did not disappoint. I really staying connected to her. We very briefly got her as a colleague for a year, and you were her next door neighbor even. So.
I had the magic doorway that I could see the amazing stuff going on in her classroom and just the level of engagement with the students and just the different. I mean, every day was so deeply critical, so deeply involved in different texts. There was no surface level in our classroom ever, and it was just so cool. I took away a lot of tools and ideas from her. So
and I think one of the things I know I benefited from early on was the preparation piece that she does so well. So I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk a little bit about that. But a big takeaway for me was just, the front end work she would do always paid off on what happened in the classroom space.
Yes.
And early in my career as an educator, that was something I think I struggled with. I was very much I can wing this. This will work out.
Yeah.
No,
you
can't wing everything.
Nope. No. She's a master front loader and then also a facilitator when it comes to actually the classroom operations. Just her facilitating learning was really cool to see and hear every day. Yeah.
Well, we always like to kind of share some stories and things that are going on. So if you don't mind, I'll actually start today. Mine's real quick, but it's delicious is what it is. There's a local caterer that my wife has found called Kabaki's, I believe is how you pronounce it. She just, you spend all this time on the internet in front of your computer, you're bound to find these things, but she's local and her catering business is obviously defunct right now. She's got no clients. So she repurposed everything she was doing to basically create these meals that get delivered, across the local neighborhoods. And we have gotten onto that train, and man, I'm telling you, the lasagna out of this world, right? We just recently had a low country boil. I mean, wow, right?
Okay, I'm going to need the info because you're selling me.
Absolutely. And then tonight I get enchiladas. I feel like my life is just, you can probably tell by looking at me, food, major love language for me. So this is great.
Whatever. Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. It's my love language too. So.
All right.
Yeah, I understand.
But see, the difference between me and you is you run a lot. I run very, very little. I taste my child. That's about it.
Hey, that could be a good bit. So.
All right. What do you got for us? What's your story?
So today I actually got to. I was invited by the Lanier High School counseling department to speak to seniors as a special guest. So another shout out to the amazing work that the counseling department is doing at a high school. It's just amazing. They put together these weekly Zoom sessions for seniors that are still going, and they still have seniors showing up. What? We didn't even get 20. Oh, never mind. I don't want to spill any tea there, but let's just say that by this time of the year, getting 20 seniors to show up to an actual high school can be really challenging. So to get 20 seniors who are it's quarantine. So the fact that they're getting online to participate in the Zoom session really is a testament to the work that they've done to build those relationships and offer some meaningful services. So I was able to be their guest speaker today.
What did you talk about?
And I actually talked a little bit about my story, which about being a high school dropout and some of the messages that my teachers told me, and some of the ways that I was able to make some decisions to kind of turn my life around in my 20s, and just some of the hard work I had to do. But I also talked a lot about the mentoring that people did, and the need to surround yourself with successful people, because like that's what makes the difference. It's who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, it helps you visualize what you want for yourself, for sure. You know, a lot of my great mentors have also kind of helped shape that vision for me. Yes. All right, well, we can wax on poetically. That's amazing, by the way, though. That's very, very cool. I'm glad you had that opportunity, and the students needed to hear that, because I would imagine those 20 seniors that are logging in are probably, you know, they're high flyers. They're probably very in tune and you know, focused on their work and finishing strong, which is good. Yes. But they need to hear your story as a reflection of their peers that they may be ignoring or not understand why they're doing the things they're doing. Like, why would you self-sabotage yourself, right? Like, why would you unplug? Why would you not care? Well, you know, your story kind of unveils that a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
So let's, well, no, go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
No, it's cool. We can move on. It's just funny because I don't even have all those answers still. Like why I did what I did sometimes. So yeah, it was cool to share. So I kind of want to do a little something different for our digital teaching hack.
Okay.
So as we move into that, I want to talk about an organization that I've been able to work with for the past maybe even, I think it's 6 years now. I've been affiliated with the Kennesaw Mountain National Writing Project, and it is a National Writing Project site. It's one of the few that's left in Georgia, and it's super important to support organizations and sites like this. And for the teaching network out there that might not be familiar with what writing projects are, it's work that's been done for, I mean, I want to say since the 70s. I'm not super hip to all the details, but I know that writing project sites basically help teachers and educators come together to work on the craft of writing. And, you know, why that's important in the classroom? Well, anyone that's ever written alongside their students or done writing work with their students knows how valuable that is. And anyone that's spent any time in education knows how drained our batteries are by the time that summer rolls around. Like, we're just empty. We've given everything we have, and we just don't have a lot left in the tank. So writing project sites do work that not only teaches teachers new practices, so it's professional development on some level, but it's also a chance to build networks, to collaborate, to learn new ideas, and to really recharge those batteries and do some deep work on ourselves and with our own craft. So I actually wanted to share this. This is a flyer that I actually am on this year because I'm teaching one of these online workshops. But KMWP is putting together a workshop series that you can actually access digitally this year. And I'll provide some more information later for that and put this out on social media. But there are some amazing educators that are teaching some incredible content. And some of these are one-shot sessions, and some of these are week-long sessions. So just some of the names that I'm super familiar with, Dr. Heather Barton and Genevieve and Stephen Goss are incredible folks I've had the chance to cross paths with. But I mean, just looking at some of these workshop titles, art and poetry, nature poems to accompany site-specific sculpture. Like, what? Okay, I'm interested. Here's my session on podcasting. So if you've been hearing me talk about podcasting, here's an opportunity to
look,
learn.
That's I want to point out, this is what's important about this. So we've talked a lot about podcasting in the last several episodes since we started, because it's what you really did your final unit pieces with those 10th graders, you know. So for those of you that were like, man, this sounds really cool, I don't know where to start. Well, here's where you start. You literally talk to the expert himself, join this workshop and learn, right? Don't roll your eyes about that. You've built up this repertoire of being able to do these things and understand how they operate, and you've learned so much from doing it in the last 2 years. I highly recommend, if anybody's kind of looking for getting in, like, how do I do that, this is where you can learn to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's super accessible. It's just Monday through Thursday. It's an hour long each session, and all of these are an hour long, which is something I think is really cool. You don't have to drive anywhere. Just imagine if we weren't doing this digitally, this is a huge opportunity. You'd have to get in your car, you'd have to drive to a site somewhere, you'd have to, wait for it to start, and then you get an hour and then you leave and you have to come back the next day. Like that's not so fun. But being able to literally just log in online at home, dressed in your PJs, and learn from, like Kyle said, literal experts on this material. All of these have been vetted, and this is stuff that you'll walk away with actual resources and tools that you can incorporate into your lessons immediately. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's a really big honor, and it's going to be super exciting this summer. So
yeah, I'm excited for you. Well, we're going to jump into our next segment, which is What's the Good Word? So What's the Good Word is our chance to bring on our interview voice. We've been having a ton of fun bringing on our network of friends and people that we know to bring their voice about what's going on in education right now into the show. So before we bring Buffy on, what I want to do real quickly is show you one of the things that you should be following, which is her blog. She has a blog called Living in the Layers. And really, this is where she shares her dynamic work. This is where you can actually learn, borrow, take, and use things in your own English classroom in pretty dynamic ways. And she's kind of done it all. I mean, she's worked with middle schoolers, she's worked with high schoolers. Again, she's been in that media specialist place. And if you want, you can check out her archive blog called The Unquiet Librarian, which had won several awards as well. But it's just a really great resource that I want to point out before we bring Buffy on, that it's something you should be checking out. So it's just livinginthelayers.com, and can't recommend it enough. I'm subscribed to it, so I get whenever she adds new posts, and I share it with other people when I think it's good for others to see it. So we're definitely excited to have her on. All right, so Buffy, I'm going to bring you on now. All right,
Hey.
How are you?
I'm great, and I'm actually feeling very humbled by the kind words of praise and the introduction. I appreciate that, and it means much coming from you and Glenn. I know we only got to be in-person colleagues for a year, but I really enjoyed the opportunity to work and learn from both of you. And I'm glad that even though we're all in different work locations now, that we can still collaborate and support each other. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, and it's definitely from the heart. I mean, I remember, I used to keep a blog that I called The Art of Forgetting, and the first time that you commented on one of my posts, I was like, oh my God, Buffy Hamilton actually read something that I wrote. Oh my God, this is amazing. So this is and I know you're like, all right, stop, that's enough, but it means a lot. You were so prolific in the work that you've been doing and what you're trying to put out there for the good of all teachers, and especially in the English field. It was a big deal for me. So that is still one of my favorite little moments back when I was writing that blog. So you were talking about we're in different places, which is true. Just real quick, where are you teaching now?
I'm teaching at Advocacy Academy, which is a public middle school, Hall County, and we serve approximately 1,000 students. And we are a Title I school with a very diverse population, but it's very much a close-knit community with a lot of second generation now, students who are attending in the footsteps of their parents.
That's cool.
That is really interesting. Cool. Yeah.
Legacy.
So, we talked a little bit when we were trying to introduce you early on about, you've done a lot of dynamic things. You've been in the virtual space for a long time, as well as in the physical classroom. So what's your transition back into the classroom from the media center back in 2016? So you've been back in the classroom now for approximately 4 years. What has that transition kind of been like for you, where you were so prolific in the media center space for so long?
Well, it's been an interesting journey. I think probably the biggest adjustment for me was just sort of the changing landscape of education in Georgia with, CCRPI, TEKS evaluations. I had no idea that I would have to have 6 observations my first year, even though I'd been teaching a long time. But it was fine, just different. But the core kinds of things, establishing routines, seeking out new strategies, networking with your colleagues in the building as well as other places, that really was the same. So, when you're a media specialist, you're working with teachers in all grades and across different subject areas. So you have sort of a bird's eye view of things. Whereas when you come back into the classroom, you kind of come back into your own content area and or grade level. So I would say that was probably a little bit of an adjustment. I miss having opportunities to talk to people in other departments more regularly. But on the flip side of that, I very much enjoyed being able to be part of a specific department again. And of course, having my own students, because that's really, for me, what it's always been about, whether it was in the media center or in my own classroom, is just getting to know my students or the people that I'm serving and trying to build those relationships. And for me, the joy, in whatever setting it is, comes from seeing young people succeed and learn and have growth. And while that growth might not look like something significant to an outsider, when you've been working with those students for an extended period of time, when you're seeing that growth spurt and, their confidence building or that aha moment that they have. That to me, is the same in whatever, setting that you're teaching in, whether it's the media center or a regular classroom. So I think probably, the TEKS evaluations, that was kind of new because that had just started to come into the pilot phase, I guess you could say, before I left to go to work at the Cleveland Public Library. So, in a short time, it had already started the first phase of implementation, and there were a couple of test years. When I came back to the media center at Norcross High and then even Chattahoochee. But my first year in the classroom, I think, was really the first year that it was official. So there was, a little bit to learn, a learning curve with that, the expectations. But I will say our administrators at my first school, were very supportive. They let you know exactly what standards they were going to focus on in the observation or give more emphasis to. So, I felt, very at ease with that process.
Okay. One of the things you kind of touched on that I think is important is the advocacy piece that you do for students. You're a complete bulldog when it comes to your students and what they need. And what I mean by that is like, again, if you follow you online, you're always promoting what your students are accomplishing. It's always the positive trend of look at this growth, look at this piece. But then it goes beyond that because it's also about the resources you want your kids to have. You've never shied away from making sure that people can contribute or donate to the cause to get the right books or the right materials in the hands of your students, particularly with you being in a Title I school right now, just as important as ever, right? So this is a little bit off of what I know we had originally talked about, but I'm curious, what that's kind of been like. So, as you're trying to get these materials and gather these things for students and everything, what are the best strategies you found for a teacher who's looking to improve their classroom library, make better connections and resources for their students?
Well, I think my two go-to resources have been Amazon wish list and, of course, Donors Choose, which is especially friendly to Title I schools. I do think my background in writing grants as a media specialist and, writing grants to get special programs implemented probably help in, going through that process. But Donors Choose has been especially helpful because they have matching programs. They help promote your projects. Just recently, right before we left for the pandemic to school from home, Donors Choose was really helpful in making my project visible. They have their ways of doing that. And I wound up having an anonymous donor from California fund the remaining $125 that I needed to get my Poetry Tuesdays project funded. And that project was to get more poetry books just from my classroom, because I have my own collection, but kids want to take them, and you want to always diversify your collection to represent different voices and the contemporary poems as well as traditional. And of course, there's always new collections coming out, so that's very helpful. But again, Amazon wish list is great too. They don't necessarily have a matching program like Donors Choose. Very easy with parents in the community. And my Amazon wish list actually helped me fund most of the books that I needed for our nonfiction book clubs that we started in January.
Wow.
But I picked a lot of culturally diverse and newer titles that, we just weren't able to order and get turned around quickly in a short time. But it was really important to me to get those books because my purchased with my own money, and I let them vote on what they wanted to read. And of course, overwhelmingly, the new things we didn't have is what they wanted, which is great. The Amazon wish list and just different parents and colleagues and even people I don't know face to face through social media, but we're connected professionally. We're very generous and helping make that book club library happen for my students. So those are my two best go-to resources.
Yeah, I think that's what you really are the prototype of, is like how to network within the edusphere or within education. I think that's one of the things you do very brilliantly. So for people who are listening to this interview, I just want to echo what you're saying there is you got to network, you got to connect with people, and it'd be amazing how people will kind of rally around you when people know that you're doing it all for the right reasons.
Yeah, and I think your blog and just everything that you always make it about the students. So it's not like, look at what I'm doing, it's look at what they're doing. And I think that that's really important to frame the work in your classroom that way. And I think that also helps a lot when people are making decisions about, who to support, is if they see students having these amazing, aha moments that you mentioned, like that's so easy to support, so that's putting them at the front of what's happening. And really, those are the ones that are receiving those donations. It's not you, it's them. So that's cool.
Yeah, getting back to your students, I'm curious what you had your 8th graders doing before the pandemic hit that probably has helped them be successful since having to transition to doing, school from home.
Hey, well, that's a great question. So one of the things that I really established early on is the expectation that there's going to be interaction in our classroom. And that obviously comes more easily to some students than others. And I think we have to acknowledge and honor the discomfort that can be there. This year's group definitely was not as confident with some of those interaction strategies initially as my previous group of 8th graders, but you just have to meet them at their point of need and scaffold and support them and, reach deep into your toolbox, so to speak, to use those learning structures and strategies that's going to help them grow. And I look at where they were in August with their ability to discuss and respond to each other and share, and where they were by the time we left with the pandemic in March. And it was like night and day. And even my principal, who is my primary evaluator, who's come and observed, but she's also seen those learning structures and the emphasis on discussion and listening and interacting with each other. We've done teacher rounds, so where we're all 4 or 5 of us from my department are working with my specific class or someone else's, and our administrators come and observe us. That's one of the things, and even in my end of year evaluation this week, she commented on, how strong that piece is, but I do give it a lot of love and attention. And I just think it's so important for students of any age, but especially 8th graders. They're getting ready to go to high school. That's such a transitional year. Almost kind of like seniors getting ready to send them to college, giving them the experiences, in that safe space that, they feel like they can grow and get more comfortable with that. And because that was in place, when we needed to do, interactive pieces through technology like Flipgrid, the leap was, very minimal because they were used to that expectation and the way that we went about responding to each other's work and ideas.
Very cool.
I think that was super important if I had to, pick one piece of that.
So that kind of leads to my follow-up question, which is, what's your favorite digital tool that you're using right now that you think every teacher should be using?
Well, it's hard to pick one.
I know.
If I could, maybe I might bend that a little bit and pick
Sure.
two. I would say for sure Flipgrid. Yeah, Flipgrid's been around. There are lots of people who have, very generously shared what they're doing. And of course, it's a platform that's always growing and evolving. But this was really the first time that I had used it. We had been using Seesaw prior to the pandemic, and my kids liked that and enjoyed it. But Flipgrid has a little bit of an edge, I think, with the interaction. Where they post a video talking about their work or responding to something, and then they can respond to each other directly with the video piece. Now they can respond to each other in Seesaw too, but it's a different mode of interaction. And so I just felt like Flipgrid lent itself better to the distance learning environment. And we did one activity, which was an extension of something we had been doing all third quarter, which was Poetry Tuesdays. So every Tuesday, students would self-select a poem of their choice. I gave them a bunch of books and websites they could choose something from. And then once they let me know what their choice was, they had some reflection questions. And then, we had a working calendar in advance. So on their, self-selected Tuesday, we started with our poetry chats. And so they would present their poem to the class. We would dim the lights and have special lighting and, that kind of thing. And then they could, ask questions, of the presenter. And we had actually planned to shake it up a little bit for fourth quarter with more of conversations where they were going to be working more in small groups. And that's a discussion strategy we've used a lot, conversations, which if you go to cultivated and search for conversations, you can learn more about it, or it's on my blog too. But where we were going to have a little bit more small group discussion as opposed to whole class. So I wanted to keep that going when the pandemic started. So the first phase was they got to self-select and present their poems and respond. But for our second layer of that, we actually wrote our own poems. I really wanted them to have a chance to do some creative writing. And with the elimination of all the state testing, yay, I felt like I had a little attitude to put that in there, because I do think that's important, even though that's not, on a test. And so all the students, you can either write about what you're thinking or feeling or experiencing during this pandemic, bad or good or somewhere in between or all. Or if you don't want to write about that, just something that's close to your heart and mind, whatever you want to write about. And again, I provided them, a list of probably 20-something different poem writing strategies. So some of them, are things that I've done and used with students in the past. I also borrowed a lot from Dr. Sarah Donovan, who blogs at Ethical ELA. She has lots of great resources. And so students could choose the poem writing strategy they wanted. They drafted in docs. I would just kind of coach them through. I really try hard not to tell my students, fix this, do that. I try to do more of the coaching with the revision piece, with more asking them questions about what they've written. And then I'll let, it's up to them what they want to do with it. And then once it decided, okay, we're at a final draft, then they recorded themselves reading that poem in Flipgrid. And then the final piece was that you had to respond to at least 2 students. And I set up our grid so that it wasn't just by class period. It was all of my class periods together.
Cool. Yeah.
I like cross-pollination, and it'll see, who they were responding to. And some of them did more than 2 people, but again, we used a little script for response. And Glenn, it actually kind of reminds me of your feather circle, which I have used since we.
Cool. Very cool.
It's a simple script, again, from Dr. Sarah Donovan that we had used already this year. So it just was a natural fit. Here are some ideas for ways and things that you can respond to as you listen to each other's poems. And it was very evident, even though they didn't have to do this, a lot of them took notes when they were listening and really thought about
cool.
before they videoed it. And that's for 8th graders. It really is.
That's huge.
And it touched my heart. It's so full of listening to how heartfelt, genuine, and sincere they were when they were responding to each other. Hybrid, definitely, whether we're in person or hybrid or whatever happens, I'm going to continue to use that moving forward. So that's great piece. And then our culminating activity, if you will, is I took all of their poems and published an anthology using Smashwords, which I've done before. And you can download it for free on Smashwords. It's called Poems from Quarantines. They voted on the title and the cover. And you can read what my students are thinking and feeling right now.
I saw that on your blog.
Yeah, so my number one tool. And then my second one, just very quickly, Actively Learn is an awesome. And you can do as little or as much with it as you want. But what I really like is the ability, you can upload text, the paid version, which right now everybody has, so thank you. And they can annotate and respond and do different things with that text. But I also like that you can customize the discussion questions, and that they can, if they came up a little bit short, they can revise. You can give them feedback, and then they can go back in and revise and elaborate. And I
agree
that you can, and that you get even with the free. Really love Advocacy has a great variety of both fiction, nonfiction, current events, and it's a very, very gentle learning curve, and my students like it too. So I'm looking forward to. We had already used it before the pandemic, thankfully, but we definitely, leaned on it a little bit more the last 8 weeks. So those are my 2 favorite things right now.
Cool. Yeah, no, I love Actively Learn. Like it was a big level up from Common Lit. And I even had, I talked about it in a previous episode, I had students respond with pictures instead of just with writing in my mythology elective. There's so much you can do with that tool.
Yeah.
It's cool.
I think the selection of text, not that Common Lit doesn't have this too, because they have a lot of great text as well. But
they do.
I felt like, particularly with the poetry, there were just things that, for whatever reason, were a great fit for my kids, like where we're at right now. And, some of them did, I think their deepest writing.
Yep.
And connecting to the text. And it just, again, we're 40 miles away from each other, but, getting to, see virtually my students grow, that's just tremendous joy, and just helps you feel like, they're ready to take that next step forward to high school.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Well, you've inspired me to actually change up the outro a little bit. So, we always try to leave with something else that's positive or interesting or worth engaging other educators in talking about. But I think it is totally worthwhile to share the Smashwords poetry book that you've got. And again, you have this on the blog, so I grabbed it real quick. But sincerely, for people who want to find out, really the culmination of the experience for your students, this is where it's at. And it's so neat to see it come together because of how nice is that looking cover, and this entire opportunity to self-publish this way is really powerful. So I thought this would be a perfect way to kind of close things out, is for people to actually see it firsthand and see where it's located.
That's so cool.
I'm really proud of my students. I'm sure everybody out there can relate to this. A lot of our students are dealing with, challenging situations right now. I had one student whose mother was actually diagnosed with COVID-19 and, was self-quarantined in the house. And this young lady was trying to look after her mom as well as younger siblings. Other students maybe were having to share a school Chromebook, or the Wi-Fi was sketchy. And I just really, many of them ways to work through those challenges, because they cared about what they were doing. It meant something to them that they kind of went that extra mile, which again is a really big thing when you're an 8th grader. You know, to find ways to make that happen. And again, just, you know, getting to hear them read their poems and see that in Flipgrid, and then of course, you know, in print and the Smashwords book, just, you know, really reinforced, I think, that bond that I've had with my students all year. I've really loved this group, and I'm so sad that I don't get to tell them goodbye in person. I think that's hard for all of us, because this group I had this year, I mean, whatever we did, whatever learning task or structure, you know, that I challenged them to do, you know, they always stepped up and did above and beyond, you know, what I would have expected. And, you know, there were a lot of days, you know, they were just like little 9th graders already, you know, being very mature and very invested in what they were doing. So, you know, to now have, you know, sort of that living legacy with our collection of poems.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
You know, an appropriate way for us to end the school year.
Absolutely.
So cool.
What an artifact, right?
So cool.
It's, yeah, I mean, me and Glenn were recently talking about how, you know, this is a special year, I think, for Glenn and the connections and relationships he formed with kids as he transitioned to another school next year. And I know that I've had those classes too. And really meaningful time to have that. You know, I'm not in the classroom anymore, but I can remember what that feels like, and especially in a strange landscape where you can't say goodbye and you can't do the normal send-off that you would normally like to do to your kids and vice versa. You know, you take those little nuggets and those artifacts with you. So very, very wonderful. Hey, Buffy, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your voice and contributing to this show that we started.
Yeah, it's way cool.
This is, you all have kind of re-energized me today. You know, we all sort of have, you know, things ebb and flow. And right now, you know, this right now is a bit of a stressful time because we're closing out the year, but, you know, in a way that's unfamiliar and unorthodox and not the norm. But I think, you know, that's why things like what you and Glenn are doing with this show are important. But, you know, we get support from our colleagues in the building, but to be able to connect people we've worked with in the past or whose work we admire, you know, just to be able to do that, that just kind of gives you that little boost and that little jolt and just kind of reminds you that, you know, what we do really does matter.
So much. Yeah.
I think probably now, you know, the public has a greater appreciation for that because it is challenging work, but it's a labor of love. But thank you so much for letting me be part of this today.
Oh, thank you again for joining us. And for those who are watching the show, thank you for continuing to watch. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to continuing some great conversations with more people. All right. Until next time.